And
Hey everybody, and welcome to Conversations on the Porch. I'm Rattles, and I'm here with my illustrious co-host Heidi, and we've got stuff to talk about today.
writing, the lights
What are you
on.
thinking?
Okay, so I was thinking that the world seems to be in chaos and people are stressed. My students are stressed. And it occurred to me that you've done a lot of activism kind of work, and you um, have been able to create a lot of change in the world by doing sometimes very small things. And so I just thought that maybe you could talk about the different things that people could do to gain a little control over the chaos. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I did a lot of activism in the north of Ireland. Let me clarify that I did that activism from America, um,
Hmm.
but I was able to affect some change over there. So I have a little bit of background in the kind of chaos that the world seems to be in right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you want to talk about the north of Ireland or you want to talk about uh, current situations? What's your preference?
Well, I can give just a tiny background that, yeah, I was working with the conflict in the north of Ireland, and I was primarily working with prisoners who were in the internment camp or in some of the prisons. So that's kind of the work I was doing, monitoring their situations and trying to mitigate that. But of course, when you're in a situation like that, you're also working with activism in the rest of the world, talking to congressional representatives, trying to get celebrities on board with helping with legal situations. So that's the kind of work I was doing. So that kind of gives me a background for the kind of chaos that people are talking about today.
Okay. So if people are stressed, what are some things that they could do in order to have an impact or to lower their stress?
Yeah, I think the most of the people that I'm hearing from today are in part stressed because they feel like everything's in chaos, but more so they say, I don't know what to do about it, or I wish I could do something about it, but I'm only one person. Um, so yeah, sometimes the easiest way to get past that stress is to actually get involved in whatever way you can get involved. And it's not tied to one side of the political spectrum or another. Whatever your cause is, there are things that you can do. And one of the important principles for me is the fact that one person can do something. Recently, there was a huge protest on one side of the political spectrum, and 8 million people showed up across the country. And people tend to see that as like one big conglomerate of 8 million people as a unit. And that's not what happened. What happened was 8 million individual people said, you know what? I heard there's this thing going on. I think I'll wander down and see what's happening, see if I can be part of it. 8 million people made individual decisions, and each of their individual decisions contributed to that 8 million people. So don't think that you can't do anything because you're one person.
Okay. So I've always had questions about protests. And so there were 8 million people. And I've always wondered, how does that translate into impact? I mean, that was a lot of people and they had lots of signs and so forth. But how is it that protests impact the cause?
In most countries in the world, and the US in particular, any kind of democratic country, the people in charge have to worry about votes. They have to worry about losing their job if they don't get the votes. So if there's an issue and politicians aren't sure where the people are standing on that issue, when 8 million people come out and say, hey, I'm upset about this, that lets those politicians know, it puts them on notice, so to speak, that that's an issue that they might want to take a look at. You know, you've got 8 million people in the streets saying, I'm upset about this issue. If you want to keep your job as a lawmaker, you better take notice of what those 8 million votes are about.
So you're talking about 8 million people, but it wasn't 8 million people in one location. And so some of the small towns around here, it's on the news, had 100 people or 50 people. Are those important as well as the ones that have the thousands and thousands of people?
Yes, because each of those little ones contributed to those 8 million people. And we had about 1,500 in the town that I'm in. Um, and those 1,500 are part of that landscape of 8 million. And when you have 1,500 in a little town like I'm in, if nobody else takes notice, your state people are going to take notice.
Okay.
So it is a way to let those who rely on our votes know where we as a people stand on issues.
And maybe say the obvious, but so in a town like the one I'm in, there's a 50-person protest. It's really only valuable if the media gets involved. Is that right?
Well, these days, not so much because that can go on social media.
That's a
And
type of media, right?
yes, but we're talking, but you can put it there yourself. You know, those people can go out and put those photos up themselves. We no longer rely on mainstream media. We don't even rely on the local newspaper to come out and take pictures. So technically, yeah, that is a form of media, but it's a media that you control and nobody's going to stop you putting those photos out.
Right.
Where, you know, years ago you had to rely on calling the newspaper and hoping they showed up. And that's actually still a good thing. You still, if you're going to do something, it's still a good idea to call the local media, call the local newspaper, call the local TV station, call some of the news stations that are not immediately local because they may be looking for something.
All right. So I am not a protest type person. That's just not my personality. So for people who aren't the protester type, what other kinds of activities could they engage in with regard to their cause that would be as helpful and contribute to the the impact, getting change in the world?
Well, one thing that anybody who's not a protesting kind of person can do is to drive down the street where the protest is happening and honk your horn and wave at the protesters. That's a very simple thing. You're contributing to the event without being out there protesting, and you're also encouraging the people who have been standing there in the cold for 2 hours with their feet freezing.
Okay.
So that's a very simple thing that anybody can do is just drive on through and say hello and express support. And if the local media are out there, they're going to catch that too. So that's a very sort of passive, but another way to be part of an actual protest. Um, but if being around that is not comfortable for you, you can just Google how do I find my local representatives? How do I find my state representatives? How do I find my federal representatives? And it'll give you the information you need to call those offices and leave a message. Most of the time it is just going to be leaving a message. You can email them or write a letter to them. You can write letters to the editor and write letters to editors of bigger papers even. Local papers great, but you might be able to find a bigger paper, write the New York Times. So there's those things you can do. If you have the money to contribute, great. You can contribute to an organization that helps the cause that you're interested in.
You know, I hate the phone, so I wouldn't be doing that one. With letters, what if what if I have strong feelings about a particular cause, the environment, animal welfare, but I don't feel particularly informed enough, like I could write a persuasive enough letter, or don't have the details, and maybe don't have the time to go look it up. Are there resources that you can, like, generally speaking, are there resources that you can find that would help
Yes.
help somebody draft a letter?
I get emails probably on a daily or weekly basis saying, please write your senator about this. Here's a sample letter. And you can take that letter and you can just change a word or two here and there. One thing that you don't want to necessarily do, and this is one of those things that people don't understand, a lot of people want to do petitions. And in America, at least, petitions are mostly useless
Why is
because
that?
typically senators and Congress people, they have people, so they're not going to see your letters for the most part, but their staff will. And the staff quite often has a trigger point. When we get X number of pieces of mail on this subject, I will then take it to
Mm.
a senator. But until we get X number of pieces of mail, we just toss them. So if you send a petition with 500 signatures on it, there's a piece of mail. But if 500 people write individual letters, that's 500 pieces of mail. That's going to come to the senator's attention a lot faster than that one petition, which is just one piece of mail. So it is absolutely better. And if you're organizing those kinds of things, it's absolutely better to organize a letter writing campaign and provide a sample letter if you want to. Um,
Okay.
um, And there's some easier things even. I mean, you can find out what companies support that cause and what companies oppose that cause. And you can choose to purchase from the companies that support your cause, and you can choose to boycott the companies that don't.
Mhm.
Um, and in fact, you can write to television program producers and say, as long as you're running this ad from this company, I can't support, I won't be paying attention to your ads and I will be boycotting those.
Mhm.
Um, you can write to companies and say, up until now, I was using all of your products. I love your products, but unfortunately, I can't in good conscience use them anymore because I've discovered that you're testing on animals in China and I can't support that. Or you're donating to this cause. I've seen that you donated to this candidate who advocates for things I don't agree with. And in those
Where,
cases, it's to really hit the morality of it, not just don't just write and say, I don't support this senator, so I'm not gonna, you know, you're gonna you're gonna say I can't support this thing that this senator does. I've discovered that this senator meets with neo-Nazis and you're supporting that senator, which means you're tacitly supporting that and therefore, so that's the hit the morality issues, don't hit the people, because
mhm.
that's saying I don't like this senator is meaningless.
Yeah. Sometimes causes don't have to be huge, like big politics and big environmentalism. It could just be customer service at businesses. And I know that being around you, I've seen you fill out cards or deliberately write notes to managers about employees that do good things. Do you want to
Mhm.
comment on that at all? You've
I
gotten
don't
people
have too much
lunch.
I don't have too much to say to it, but I do feel like when you complain about an employee and that complaint gets back to the employee, it's not going to make him give you better service the next time you come in. Now he hates his job even more. So I am more inclined to write or do something for an employee who did something special, even if it wasn't huge, because then his boss comes to him and says, hey, you did this good thing, and this customer said a good thing about you. That's going to make him want to do more good stuff. That's going to make him like his job a little better. It's going to make him like his boss a little better. So yeah, I think that complaining about customer service, unless it's a really major thing, there are things. Um, I was in a place one time where an employee literally took a bag out of the trash to put my food in. And I felt like the company needed to know about that. So there are things where the company needs to know if an employee is doing something that's endangering customers. But I'm not going to write and say, oh, this employee was rude or this employee didn't move fast enough or, you know, leave that for, leave that one alone and say this employee
Yeah.
did something awesome.
Do you want to, I love the example that you told me about at the, I think you were in line at the airport.
Hmm.
Talk about that one because I thought that was in terms of having a big impact on
Oh, yeah.
the situation
On
when
that
it
one
was,
individual.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a weather system that moved in and all of the flights were delayed. Some of them were canceled. And this young employee was staffing the desk, and there was a woman just berating him. And he stood there and smiled the entire time. And she was saying things like, I booked this flight 2 weeks ago. There's no way that it could be delayed by weather now, which obviously makes no sense. And she was demanding that he bump somebody off that had paid for an earlier flight in order to put her on that flight because it was going to leave sooner than her flight. And he was just explaining that he couldn't do that. And she was just being really vicious. And she said she was going to go talk to his supervisors. And he continued to smile and he explained to her carefully where she needed to go to make that complaint and exactly what door to knock on. And I was bothered because he handled it so professionally. And she was going to go complain about him, and probably he'd get in trouble, and nobody would be there to say how incredibly patient and professional he had been. So I went in the bathroom because I didn't have a notebook with me, and I got paper towel from the bathroom, and I borrowed a marker from an employee. Um, and by that point, the airport had lost power, so it was in quite a mess anyway. But I borrowed a marker from an employee and wrote my letter, my note, on a piece of paper towel from the bathroom. And I handed it to that employee and said, can you please get this to someone who supervises these people? And I noted the time, the desk that he was at, a general, and I think I had his name from his name tag, general physical description, and this employee promised that they would do that, and that's where I left it. And then, yes, several weeks later, I got a phone call from the airline. Oh, and I had also put my contact information because I thought they wouldn't take my note on paper towel seriously, so I wanted them to be able to contact me and say, did you really, is this important? Um, so yeah, I got a phone call from the airline, and they said that that woman had indeed gone down and ranted and raved and complained, and the employee was going to get in trouble because she said he was rude. And then they got my bizarre little note. Um, and as a result of that, instead of getting in trouble, that employee was called up at the next staff meeting and held up as an example of what they want their employees to be like. And he got, I don't think he got an award, but he certainly was held up as a shining example at the staff meeting instead of getting in trouble. So with my one little scribbled note.
And so not only did he not get in trouble, he was commended for it, and it also reinforced corporate culture, the corporate like this is so other people were told this is how you should behave also. I mean that's
Yeah.
I think that's pretty
Yeah.
impactful, especially on a piece of paper towel.
Yep. Yeah, that was
So
the
it
whole
doesn't have to be
application of it.
fancy.
Nope, does not have to be fancy.
Okay, so the other part of this was there was chaos, people kind of feeling helpless and stressed. So you've talked about kind of you don't have to feel stressed, but you don't have to feel helpless. But what about the stress? You want to comment on how people can address the stress?
Yeah, I certainly had to deal with a lot of that with the stuff that I was dealing with. And there are a couple of things you can do. One thing to do is to learn the difference between inconvenient and bad. If you get whipped cream on the latte that you'd said you didn't want whipped cream on, unless you're allergic to the whipped cream, enjoy it. It's not a big deal. If you get the wrong flavor in your coffee, unless you really hate caramel, enjoy the caramel, just drink it. Um, I mean, that's a funny example, but it's one that hits that I see all the time because I'm always thinking, man, I wish that my life were so perfect that getting extra whipped cream by accident constituted a crisis. So that is it's a lesson I learned by dealing with bad, but I think you can learn it anyway. Just keep in mind, when you start to get stressed about something, is this inconvenient in the moment or is this really a bad thing?
And let me, I have to toss in here because you know this, other people don't know this, but I go to my sister for tact information all the time. And early on, I remember her saying, I went for something about work. I don't even remember what it was. But her question was, does it really matter? Like matter with a capital M. And that sticks with me. And so
Yep.
I that runs in my head when I start fretting about something. Does it matter? You know?
And another thing in this world where everybody seems to be at each other's throats all the time, um, think about if somebody's saying something about you, um, or wants to get you into a fight, ask yourself what that person means to you. Is this somebody that you love and somebody that you respect? And if it isn't, why do you care what they think about you? Why are you gonna, if this is not a person you care about and respect, why does their opinion matter to you? Just let it go. Let it go. And then I hear people, oh, he pushes my buttons. I can't help it. He pushes my buttons. And my response to that is always the same. Takes a crazy person to keep pushing a button that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep,
the
that's
buttons
good.
is as long as that button works, they'll keep pushing the button. But one of my mentors in the Irish situation was always telling me, the moment you let someone make you react emotionally, you've given them control over you and they win. So he would say, don't let anybody make you react. You act and make other people react. That's how you win. So it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have emotions. You just don't want to turn them into a leash and then hand somebody at the other end of the leash.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not worth it. It takes too much energy. Outrage takes too much energy. Save your
Yeah.
outrage for what's bad. Outrage over inconvenience is just a waste of energy. I don't know where people get the energy to be outraged about inconvenience things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
nobody's gonna die, it's probably okay.
Yeah. And then I think the one thing that you always tell me with the critters that you pick up off the road, the Mormon crickets and the rattlesnakes, gopher snakes, and so forth, that every individual matters. And
Mhm.
in this case, in any kind of cause and any kind of impact in the world, every individual does matter. And so actually just doing something
Mhm.
would lower some stress.
Yeah, it
I mean,
does. And one of the most selfish things that I used to do all the time when I had to walk a couple of miles to work every day was I hated Mondays. And the most selfish thing I could do was find some homeless person on the way and buy that person a cup of coffee because they got coffee out of it, but my whole day would get fixed. It's
yeah,
just doing something for somebody else makes a difference. Makes a difference.
Yeah.
And
But it makes a difference on both sides. Makes a
yeah, it
difference
makes a
on both
difference on
sides.
both sides.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it makes a huge difference. And another thing, a friend of mine teaches Buddhist, he's a Buddhist teacher. And one of the things he says is the fastest way, the one mindful practice that, as he says, you get the most bang for your buck, it is a gratitude practice.
Mm.
And that sounds like a silly thing. But if you get in the habit of at the end of your day or at the beginning of your day or once a week, writing down something you're grateful for, um, and it sounds like a silly little thing, but I started paying attention to that. And where it helps me is when I start, I've been going through some health issues, and when I start feeling like, a little bit sorry for myself in the midst of that, I catch myself and replace it.
Yeah.
Like, and just replace it with, okay, stop. You're not dying at the moment. So nobody's going to die. So can we turn that around and be grateful that this week wasn't so bad? Can we be grateful that, hey, I walked to the grocery store and back and it was fine? Can I be grateful for something else that happened to somebody that I love and they had a good thing happen? So I'm a big believer in gratitude practice, and it doesn't have to be a spiritual thing or a religious thing. It's just a practical way to make yourself feel a little better about the world.
Yep. Yep. You talk about yourself as being Buddhish. I've always liked
Yeah,
that. Buddhist.
sort of.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
yeah,
So the world is in chaos. People feel helpless, but they can do things. They've got different ways that they can take action, lower their stress, and be grateful for
yeah.
whatever they're grateful
The
for.
best way to stop feeling helpless is to help.
Yeah, very good. Well, on that, should we flip the light off?
Sure. Let's let's head inside.
All righty. And before we turn the light off, if anybody has any topics that they'd like us to discuss, feel free to ask and maybe we'll cover them.
We probably will. Not like we got a lot of ideas right now. We're just starting out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All righty. So we will see you next time on the porch.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.